In Star Wars A New Hope, Obi-Wan Kenobi uses a Jedi mind trick to get past the stormtroopers who are looking for C-3PO and R2-D2. He simply says, "These are not the droids you're looking for." And they immediately reply, "These are not the droids we're looking for." It's a powerful moment that has captivated audiences for decades, but is it really possible to change someone's mind with just a few words? I'm Andy Earl, the CEO of Write It Great, an elite ghostwriting firm that writes books designed to change the way people think. Before that, I spent years working as a psychology researcher. For as long as I can remember, I've been obsessed with the idea of changing minds using words. By combining well-known psychology principles with little-known studies, I've uncovered a step-by-step method for shifting someone's beliefs, a real-life Jedi mind trick. And in this video, I'm going to share it with you. We'll explore the science-backed techniques that can help you perform Jedi mind tricks in the real world. You'll learn how to plant seeds of doubt, reframe issues using advanced analogy techniques, and encapsulate a new idea in a single powerful phrase that changes someone's mind. So let's dive in and discover how you can become a Jedi master of persuasion. Have you ever tried to change someone's mind only to have them cling to their original belief even more strongly? That's the backfire effect in action. Imagine trying to convince your wife that your friend John, who she finds irritating, is actually a great guy. You tell her all about his generosity, kindness, sense of humor, but instead of softening her stance, she becomes even more convinced that John is a jerk. Researchers have found that when we're presented with evidence that conflicts with our deeply held beliefs, we often become more entrenched in our original position. Our minds put up a defensive shield, protecting our beliefs from the dangers of conflicting evidence. So if that's the case, then how do we present someone with a new way of thinking that will change their mind about something? The answer is we have to work up to it in just the right way. Have you ever felt that uncomfortable tension that happens when you discover just a little piece of information that kind of conflicts with something that you believe? It's not enough that you're going to change the way you think about it, but it just feels like a little itch that needs to be scratched. Creating that type of belief discomfort in somebody is the first step in getting them to change their mind. When we experience this kind of discomfort, we have two choices. We can either change our belief to fit the new information, or we can discredit the information so we can hold on to our belief. Most of the time in this situation, we really prefer the second option. If there is any way we can explain away the contradictory evidence, we'll do it so we can hold on to our existing beliefs. So what we can do as communicators is slowly introduce more and more of these little feelings of discomfort in our listener. We stack them on top of each other one at a time until we've built up enough discomfort that we can push a new belief on them. Because the real question we're asking here is, how can we change someone's mind without triggering their mental defenses? It starts with something I call dissonance pings, small pieces of information that don't quite fit with their existing belief system. Imagine you're a detective trying to convince your partner that your prime suspect, the mechanic, is innocent. You can't just come right out and say he didn't do it, because that's going to trigger the backfire effect. Instead, start with just introducing a dissonance ping. I was going through the case files again and I noticed something odd. The eyewitness testimony puts the suspect at the crime scene around 8 p.m., but I tracked down the security footage from the garage and the mechanic didn't leave work until 9:15 that night. It's kind of strange, isn't it? This detail doesn't prove the mechanic's innocence, but it plants a seed of doubt. It's one piece of information that doesn't quite fit the narrative of guilt. So the first step in pulling off a real-life Jedi mind trick is to stack up enough dissonance pings to where you've really got the person feeling uncomfortable with their current beliefs. Like they used to be really sure about something, but now I don't know anymore. That's when you can move to the second step, which I call a Trojan Horse Analogy. Here's an example. What do bookstores and restaurants have in common? More than you might think when it comes to changing someone's mind. Imagine you're trying to convince a friend to try a new restaurant in the suburbs, but your friend is convinced that all the best restaurants are downtown. Instead of arguing with them directly, you might say, I know what you mean about restaurants. I used to think the same thing about bookstores. I always went to the big one downtown. Then I discovered this amazing little bookshop in the suburbs. It's a hidden gem, and it made me realize that good things can be found in unexpected places. I wonder if the same might be true for restaurants. By using an analogy from a different situation, you're allowing your friend to hear what you're saying without getting defensive. If you get them to accept that point before drawing the analogy back to the current conversation, you create a feeling of, yeah, I guess that does make sense. The analogy acts like a Trojan horse, sneaking the new perspective past their initial resistance. Okay, so you've planted seeds of doubt using dissonance pings, and then you used a Trojan horse analogy to reframe the issue. Now it's time for the big reveal, the Jedi Mind trick, where with just a few words, you change someone's perspective. Imagine you've been trying to convince a friend that her new boyfriend isn't quite what he seems to be. You've been building up for a few minutes, and now you're ready to crystallize a new perspective in her mind. I know you're excited about this guy, but I can't shake the feeling that something is off. The way his stories don't add up, the fact that he's always too busy to meet your friends. It reminds me of your ex who turned out to be a jerk. I'm not saying he's definitely bad news, but it's worth taking a step back and looking at the big picture. Is he really the Prince Charming you thought he was? Then you can summarize your whole perspective in a single pithy statement. Something like, from what I've seen, he brings out the worst in you. Or, I've got to say, how it looks to me is he just doesn't care. So you present the evidence that creates that feeling of discomfort, then draw a connection to another situation, and finally, boil down the new perspective into a single pithy phrase. This is just like the aha moment that our detective is trying to create for his partner in the murder investigation. After introducing a few key dissonance pings and a clever analogy, he's ready to cement the new perspective. You know, I've been thinking about our prime suspect, the mechanic. At first, I was convinced he was our guy, but then I started just noticing things that don't add up. The witness putting him at the scene at 8 p.m., but the security camera footage from the garage showing he didn't leave until 9:15. The victim's DNA not matching any of the samples from the mechanic's workspace. The fact that the mechanic has been saving up to buy a house, so he has no financial motive. I don't know, it reminded me of that burglary case from last month. Remember, we got so focused on that one suspect, we missed the real culprit. I'm starting to wonder, what if the mechanic isn't our guy? This is the moment when the detective brings together all the pieces of the puzzle and invites his partner to look at the situation in a new way. These are not the droids you're looking for. When you're trying to change the way someone thinks, studies show that boiling the new belief you want them to adopt down to a single pithy statement can really help it stick in their mind. Let's say you're trying to convince your teenage son to take his schoolwork more seriously. You've pointed out his slipping grades. You've shown him examples of successful people who excelled in school. Now, it's time to drive it all home with a catchy phrase. Son, you've got potential, but potential doesn't mean squat if you don't put in the work. Right now, you're coasting. You're doing just enough to get by, but just enough won't cut it in the real world. If you want to be great, remember this. Good enough isn't good enough. This pithy statement summarizes your key points in a way that's easy to remember and repeat. It helps the new belief to take root in your son's mind. Our detective could use a similar tactic to cement the new belief for his partner. After laying out all the evidence, he could drive the point home with a single unforgettable phrase. The mechanic isn't our guy. This pithy statement would help make the new understanding stick, just like how good enough isn't good enough might stick in your son's mind, pushing him to work harder and aim higher. And there you have it, the science-backed secrets to performing a real-life Jedi mind trick. We've covered the key steps, introducing dissonance pings to plant seeds of doubt, using Trojan horse analogies to reframe the issue, and then bringing home the new way of thinking in a single pithy statement. These are not the droids you're looking for. By mastering these principles, you can become a true Jedi of persuasion. If you found this helpful, please like this video and subscribe to our channel for more science-backed communication tips. And may the Force be with you always.